The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the weapons maintenance facility at Forward Operating Base Sentinel. The air inside hung thick with the familiar scent of gun oil and metal, a smell that Private First Class Marina Volkov had come to associate with quiet moments between chaos. She sat alone at the far corner workbench, her movements precise and practiced as she field-stripped the Barrett M82 sniper rifle. Each component was removed with care, laid out in perfect order on the cleaning mat. Bolt carrier group, barrel assembly, trigger mechanism. Everything in its place, just as she had been taught. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh illumination on the weapon that had become an extension of herself over the past 14 months. Marina's hands moved automatically through the cleaning routine, muscle memory taking over while her mind wandered to the mission 3 days prior. The compound had been fortified. Intelligence suggested 12 to 15 hostile combatants, but the reality had been different. Always different. She pushed the memory away, focusing instead on the methodical task before her. Cotton patches soaked in solvent, running through the barrel, checking for copper fouling, carbon buildup, any imperfection that might affect accuracy. Most soldiers avoided the weapons facility during off hours, preferring the relative comfort of their quarters or the distraction of the recreation tent. Marina preferred the solitude. Here, surrounded by the tools of her trade, she could exist without the weight of others, expectations, or curiosity. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear the door open, didn't notice the footsteps approaching until a shadow fell across her workbench. Private Volkov. The voice was familiar. Colonel Raymond Castellanos, base commander. Marina's hands stilled immediately. She set down the cleaning rod and stood at attention, her chair scraping against the concrete floor. Sir. She kept her eyes forward, focused on a point just past his shoulder. Castellanos was a career officer, 30 years of service etched into the lines of his face. He had the bearing of someone who had earned his rank through combat rather than politics, though Marina knew he excelled at both. His presence in the maintenance facility was unusual. Commanders had subordinates for weapons inspections. At ease, he moved closer to the workbench, his gaze falling on the disassembled rifle. The Barrett? Your primary weapon? Yes, sir. Marina relaxed slightly, but remained standing. How many rounds through this particular rifle since your deployment? Marina considered the question. Approximately 2,000 rounds, sir. A mix of training and operational use. Castellanos nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the array of components. He reached out, his fingers hovering over the scope mount, then pulled back without touching it. And you maintain it yourself. It wasn't really a question, but Marina answered anyway. Yes, sir. I prefer to know the condition of my equipment personally. Commendable. Castellanos' tone was neutral, professional. I've been reviewing your file, Private. Your scores at sniper school were exceptional. Top of your class in marksmanship, observation, and fieldcraft. Marina said nothing. Praise from superior officers always felt like a prelude to something else. A new assignment, a transfer, questions about her performance. Your instructors noted something interesting. Castellanos continued, now looking directly at her. They said you had an unusual level of calm under pressure, that you could maintain focus in conditions that broke other candidates. I do my job, sir. You do more than that. He gestured toward the rifle. May I? Marina nodded, and Castellanos picked up the scope that lay separated from the weapon. He turned it over in his hands, examining the adjustment turrets, the objective lens. This is a Leupold Mark V HD, 5 to 25 magnification. Not standard issue. Personal purchase, sir. Approved by my platoon leader. Expensive piece of equipment for a private's salary. Marina met his gaze evenly. My priorities differ from most, sir. Us. A faint smile crossed Castellanos' face. I can see that. He set the scope down carefully, exactly where he had found it. Tell me, Private, how do you prepare mentally before a mission? The question caught Marina off guard. In 14 months of deployment, no one had asked her that. They asked about targets, ranges, wind conditions, ammunition types, never about what happened in her head. I focus on the technical aspects, sir. Range estimation, environmental factors, target analysis. The mechanics leave less room for other considerations. Other considerations. Castellanos repeated the phrase thoughtfully. You mean the human element? Marina's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I mean variables that don't affect the mission outcome, sir. Castellanos studied her for a long moment. In that silence, Marina became acutely aware of the setting sun visible through the high windows, casting orange light across the maintenance facility. The shadows were lengthening, and she still had half the rifle to reassemble. How many confirmed eliminations do you have, Private Volkov? The question hung in the air between them. Marina's expression remained neutral, but something shifted behind her eyes. This was the real reason for his visit. The pretense of casual inspection fell away. I don't keep count, sir. Your spotter does. Staff Sergeant Chen keeps meticulous records, as he should. Those records cross my desk. Castellanos' voice remained even, conversational. The number is significant. Marina said nothing. What was there to say? The records existed. The missions were documented. Each shot logged, verified, confirmed. 47. Castellanos spoke the number quietly, as if testing its weight. 47 confirmed enemy combatants eliminated over 14 months of deployment. That's more than most snipers achieve in entire careers. I've had more opportunities than most, sir. Opportunity is worthless without skill. He paused. And without something else. Something harder to define. Marina felt the familiar wall rising inside her. The one she constructed between herself and anyone who tried to look too closely. I'm trained to perform a function, sir. I perform it with remarkable efficiency. Castellanos walked slowly around the workbench, viewing the disassembled rifle from different angles. But efficiency doesn't fully explain what I've seen in your mission reports. The compound raid 3 days ago, for example. Marina's hands, resting at her sides, curled slightly into fists. The compound? She had known this conversation was coming. The intelligence assessment was flawed, she said carefully. There were more hostiles than anticipated. 23, according to the final count. Your team was pinned down in the southern sector. The mission commander called for air support, but the weather had deteriorated. Close air support was unavailable. Yes, sir. I'm aware. What the mission report doesn't fully capture is what happened next. Castellanos stopped walking, positioning himself directly across the workbench from her. In the span of 17 minutes, you've eliminated 11 targets from a concealed position 800 meters from the compound. 11 shots, 11 hits, under conditions that most snipers would consider prohibitive. Marina kept her voice steady. Staff Sergeant Chen provided excellent support. His wind calls were accurate. I've spoken with Chen. He says you were making calculations faster than he could relay information. That you were operating on instinct as much as training. Muscle memory, sir. Repetition creates automatic responses. Castellanos shook his head slowly. I've been in combat for 3 decades, Private. I know the difference between trained response and something else. What you did 3 days ago kept your entire platoon from being overrun. You saved lives. I did my job. Why do you minimize it? The question was sharp, cutting through Marina's deflection. Most soldiers would be proud of such performance. You speak about it like you are filling out paperwork. Marina met his gaze directly, and for a moment, the careful mask slipped. Because pride requires believing what you did was good, sir. I did what was necessary. The distinction matters to me. The honesty of the statement seemed to surprise Castellanos. He studied her face, seeing perhaps for the first time the person behind the exemplary service record. A young woman barely into her 20s, carrying weight that most people would never comprehend. "How old are you, Private?" 22, sir." 22. He repeated it softly. "When I was 22, I was a second lieutenant in the Gulf War. I thought I understood combat. I was wrong. It took years before I really understood what war asks of us." Marina remained silent, uncertain where this conversation was leading. "Do you know why I'm here today?" Castellanos asked. "Why I came personally instead of sending your platoon leader?" "No, sir. Because your name has appeared on a different kind of list. One that only a few people have access to." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "There's a selection process for a specialized unit. They're looking for snipers with specific capabilities. Not just accuracy, but the ability to operate under extreme pressure in complex environments." Marina's expression didn't change, but internally she felt something tighten. Specialized units meant deeper shadows, missions that didn't appear in official records, work that existed in the spaces between acknowledged military operations. "I'm not interested, sir." Castellanos raised an eyebrow. "You don't even know the details. I don't need to. I'm content with my current assignment. Content." He seemed to taste the word. That's an interesting choice. Not proud, not fulfilled. Content. Marina didn't respond. Let him think what he wanted. She had learned early that explanations only invited more questions. "This unit operates globally," Castellanos continued, as if she hadn't declined. "High-value targets, strategic eliminations, operations that conventional forces can't address. The selection rate is less than 5%. Most candidates wash out in the first week. Then you should select someone else, sir. I haven't finished." His tone hardened slightly, the casual conversation shifting into something more commanding. "The reason I'm here, the reason I wanted to speak with you personally, is because I've seen something in your record that concerns me." Marina's attention sharpened. Concerns from a base commander were rarely good news. "Every sniper deals with the psychological impact of their work differently," Castellanos said. "Some become detached, viewing targets as objects rather than people. Others cope through dark humor, building emotional walls. A few can't cope at all and wash out." He gestured toward the rifle components on the workbench. "But you're different. You maintain your equipment with obsessive precision. You volunteer for every mission. Your performance reviews note that you never socialize with your unit outside of operational necessity. You spend your free time here alone with weapons." Marina's jaw tightened. "My personal time is my own, sir." "It is. But when a soldier's behavior suggests they're running from something rather than toward something, it's my responsibility to pay attention. I'm not running from anything." "Then what are you doing, Private?" The question was gentle but insistent. "Because from where I stand, it looks like you're trying to reduce yourself to nothing but the function you perform. As if becoming the rifle will somehow make it easier." The observation hit closer than Marina wanted to admit. She looked down at the disassembled weapon. The components that fit together in only one specific way, each piece serving a clear purpose. There was comfort in that simplicity. "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted." Marina chose her words carefully. "You asked how I prepare mentally before missions? The truth is, I don't prepare. I empty. Every thought that isn't directly relevant to the shot gets discarded. Every emotion that might affect my breathing gets suppressed. By the time I'm in position, there's nothing left but the calculation and the execution." She met his eyes. "You call it reducing myself. I call it survival. Because if I let myself think about who those people might have been, what they might have believed, who might be waiting for them to come home, I couldn't pull the trigger. And if I can't pull the trigger, people on my side die. Castellanos was quiet for a long moment. That's the most honest thing any sniper has ever said to me. Then you understand why I'm not interested in your specialized unit. Sir, actually, it makes me more convinced you're exactly who they need. He picked up a small notebook from his pocket, wrote something, tore out the page, and placed it on the workbench. This is a contact number. When you're ready to consider it, call. Sir, I've made my position clear. You have. But I've been doing this long enough to know the difference between someone who's found their calling and someone who's found a way to function despite hating what they do. His expression softened slightly. 47 confirmed eliminations in 14 months isn't just exceptional, private. It's unsustainable. Marina said nothing, her eyes fixed on the piece of paper. The specialized unit I mentioned has resources. Support structures that don't exist in conventional forces. People who understand what you're going through because they've been through it themselves. I don't need support, sir. I need to be left alone to do my job. Castellanos picked up his hat from where he had set it on a nearby bench. Then let me leave you with this thought. The reason that unit exists isn't just because the military needs elite snipers. It's because elite snipers need each other. The only people who can truly understand what you carry are the ones carrying the same weight. He started toward the door, then paused. One more thing. The number 47. It's going to keep growing. Every mission, every target, every confirmed elimination adds to it. The question you need to ask yourself is how high that number can climb before it becomes the only thing you are. Marina watched him leave, the door closing with a soft click. The maintenance facility returned to silence, broken only by the hum of fluorescent lights. She looked down at the piece of paper on her workbench. A phone number, nothing else. No name, no unit designation, just 10 digits that represented a choice she wasn't ready to make. Turning back to the rifle, Marina resumed her work. Bolt carrier group reinstalled, barrel assembly locked into place, trigger mechanism checked and rechecked. The familiar rhythm soothed her, pushing away the colonel's words. The number he had spoken aloud, the weight he suggested she was carrying. 47. She had known the count, of course. Staff Sergeant Chen kept records, as he should. But hearing it spoken aloud gave it a different weight. Made it real in a way that mission reports and after-action debriefs never had. The scope went back on last, mounted with precise torque specifications. Marina looked through it, adjusting the parallax, checking the reticle alignment. Through the scope, the world became ordered, measurable, predictable. Range could be calculated. Wind could be compensated for. Movement could be anticipated. If only everything else was so clear. As darkness fell outside, Marina finished her work. The rifle was reassembled, cleaned, ready for whatever came next. She secured it in the weapons locker, signed out in the logbook, and prepared to return to her quarters. The piece of paper with the phone number still lay on the workbench. Marina stared at it for a long moment, then folded it carefully and placed it in her pocket. Not a decision, she told herself. Just acknowledgement that the choice existed. Walking back across the base in the gathering darkness, Marina replayed the conversation with Colonel Castellanos. His questions had been more perceptive than comfortable. The observation about running from something rather than towards something lingered particularly sharp. Was that what she was doing? Running? Or was she simply doing what needed to be done? What she had been trained to do? What the military had invested considerable time and resources teaching her to do? The barracks were quiet when she arrived. Most of her unit was either at the dining facility or the recreation tent. Marina preferred it this way. She could retreat to her bunk, close the privacy curtain, and exist in a space that was entirely her own. But tonight's sleep wouldn't come easily. She lay in the darkness, listening to the distant sounds of the base. thinking about numbers and choices and the weight of things that couldn't be measured by any scope. 47. The number played in her mind like a drumbeat. 47 people who had woken up that morning not knowing it would be their last. 47 futures ended by her finger on a trigger. 47 families who would never understand exactly what happened or why. She told herself they were combatants, enemy forces, people who had made choices that put them in opposition to her country's interests, people who would have killed her teammates without hesitation if given the chance. But late at night, in the darkness, it was harder to maintain that distance, harder to keep the walls intact that separated the technical function from the human reality. Marina pulled the piece of paper from her pocket, unfolding it carefully. In the faint light from the emergency exit sign, the phone number was barely visible. A connection to something different. Maybe something better. Or maybe just a different kind of weight to carry. She thought about Colonel Castellanos' words. The only people who can truly understand what you carry are the ones carrying the same weight. Was that true? Or was it just another way of saying that misery loved company? Outside, a helicopter passed overhead, the rhythmic thump of rotors a familiar lullaby. Marina closed her eyes, the paper still in her hand, and tried to find the emptiness she cultivated before missions. The place where thoughts and feelings couldn't reach her. But tonight, it eluded her. Tonight, there was only the number, hanging in her mind like a sentence waiting to be completed. 47, and counting. 3 days after the conversation with Colonel Castellanos, Marina received orders for an emergency mission. Intelligence had located a high-value target in a compound 40 kilometers from the base. The window of opportunity was narrow, 12 hours at most. Staff Sergeant Chen briefed her during the helicopter flight. Target is a known bomb maker, responsible for at least 8 attacks on coalition forces. Multiple casualties attributed to his devices. Marina nodded, checking her equipment. The Barrett was secured, ammunition counted, scope covers in place. Everything exactly as it should be. The insertion went smoothly. Her team reached the observation point as dawn broke, positioning themselves on a hillside overlooking the compound. Through her scope, Marina could see the target building clearly. 850 meters. Wind from the east at 7 knots. Temperature rising as the sun climbed. Target acquired, Chen whispered, spotting through his binoculars. Second floor window, northwest corner. Marina adjusted her position, settling into the rifle. Through the scope, she could see a man moving inside the room. Mid-40s, dark beard, wearing traditional clothing. He was speaking to someone outside her field of view, gesturing animatedly. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger. Range calculated. Wind compensation dialed in. Breathing controlled and steady. But something was different this time. The man turned. And for a moment, he looked directly toward her position. Not seeing her, of course. At this distance, she was invisible. But his face was clear in her scope. Tired eyes. Weathered skin. A face that could have belonged to anyone's father, uncle, brother. 47, she thought. This would make 48. Wind holding steady, Chen murmured. You have the shot. Marina's breathing remained controlled, but her mind was suddenly loud with thoughts she had spent months suppressing. Who was this man beyond the intelligence designation? What circumstances had led him to this moment? What would his death actually change in the endless cycle of violence? Volkov Shen's voice held a note of concern. You good? She wasn't good. For the first time since becoming a sniper, Marina felt the full weight of what she was about to do. Not as a technical function or tactical necessity, but as a human being about to end another human being's existence. The man in her scope moved away from the window, disappearing into the interior of the room. Target lost visual, Chen reported. Stand by. In that moment of pause, something inside Marina fractured. All the walls she had built, all the emptiness she had cultivated. All the distance she had created between herself and her actions collapsed inward. Her hands began to shake. Subtle at first, then more pronounced. The crosshairs in her scope wavered, no longer steady on the window. Volkov. Chen's voice was sharp now. What's happening? Marina tried to speak, but no words came. The rifle that had been an extension of herself suddenly felt foreign in her hands. Heavy, wrong. I can't, she finally whispered. What? I can't take the shot. Chen stared at her, confusion and concern warring in his expression. Marina, we have a mission, I know. Her voice was hollow. But I can't, not anymore. The target reappeared in the window. Perfect position. Perfect light. The shot was there, clean and clear. Marina's finger remained on the trigger, but she couldn't make herself pull it. Every technical skill she possessed was present, but the will to execute had vanished. We need to report this, Chen said quietly. Reaching for his radio before he could transmit, an explosion rocked the compound below. Secondary blasts followed, the building erupting in flames. Through her scope, Marina watched the structure collapse, smoke billowing into the morning sky. Command, this is Overwatch. Chen spoke into his radio. Target building has been destroyed. Appears to be an internal explosion. Possible munitions accident? The radio crackled with confirmation. The target had been eliminated, just not by them. Marina lowered her rifle, her entire body trembling. The universe had made the decision for her, but it didn't change what had happened inside her. The thing that had broken couldn't be unbroken. The extraction and return to base passed in a blur. Marina moved through the motions automatically, responding when spoken to, but present only in body. Back at the base, she went directly to the weapons maintenance facility. Not to clean her rifle, but because it was the only place she knew to go. She sat at the same workbench where Colonel Castellanos had found her, the Barrett resting on the table before her. Untouched, she didn't know how long she sat there before she heard footsteps. This time, she recognized them immediately. Colonel Castellanos entered slowly, taking in her posture, her expression, the uncleaned rifle. He didn't speak immediately, just pulled up a chair and sat across from her. Chen filed his report. He finally said. Marina nodded. Of course he had. It was his duty. He said you froze, that you couldn't take the shot. Yes, sir. Want to tell me what happened? Marina looked at him, and for the first time since their last conversation, she let the mask fall completely. The emptiness didn't work anymore. I saw him as a person, not a target. And I couldn't do it. Castellanos nodded slowly, no judgment in his expression. That happens sometimes. The walls we build to protect ourselves eventually come down, usually at the worst possible moment. I failed my mission, sir. The target was eliminated. The mission succeeded, not because of me. No, he agreed. But that's not really what's bothering you, is it? Marina's hands curled into fists on the table. I don't know who I am if I can't do this anymore. The rifle, the missions, the function, that's all I've built myself around. Without it, there's nothing. That's not true. Isn't it? Her voice cracked slightly. You said it yourself. 47 eliminations in 14 months. That number is what I am. It's the only thing that defines me. Castellanos leaned forward. The number doesn't define you, Marina. It's something you did, not something you are. There's a difference. I don't know how to find that difference, sir. That's why I gave you the phone number. He gestured toward her pocket, where the folded paper still resided. The people in that unit understand this moment because they've all been through it. The breaking point where you realize you can't keep doing what you've been doing the way you've been doing it. Marina pulled out the paper, unfolding it on the table between them. The number seemed both impossibly simple and terrifyingly significant. What happens if I call? You talk to someone who understands. They'll evaluate whether the specialized unit is right for you. But more than that, they'll help you understand that what you're experiencing isn't weakness. It's humanity reasserting itself. My platoon needs a sniper. Your platoon needs you alive and functional. Not destroying yourself trying to be something you can't sustain. Castellanos' voice was firm, but not unkind. The military will find another sniper. But you won't find another you. Marina stared at the phone number. Years of training warring with a desperate need to be something other than what she had become. The number won't change, Castellanos said, standing. It'll be there when you're ready. But don't wait too long, Marina. The cost of waiting only gets higher. He left her alone with her rifle and her decision. Marina sat in the quiet maintenance facility as afternoon faded to evening. Through the high windows, she could see the sky turning orange and purple. It's the same colors that had filled the sky over the compound that morning. She thought about the man in her scope. The target she hadn't eliminated. Somewhere in the rubble of that building, his story had ended, but not by her hand. The universe had granted her a temporary reprieve, but the question remained, what came next? 47. The number would always be with her. Every confirmed elimination was permanent, recorded, irreversible. But maybe Castellanos was right. Maybe the number was something she had done. It's not something she was dot. Marina picked up her rifle, feeling its familiar weight. Once it had been a source of comfort, of identity, of purpose. Now it felt like a question waiting to be answered. She secured it in the weapons locker for the last time. Her movements precise despite the turmoil. Inside her, then she pulled out her phone and the piece of paper with the number. Her finger hovered over the screen. Years of conditioning telling her to suppress, too empty to reduce herself to pure function. But underneath that training was someone who had been 22 years old when she started carrying a weight no one that young should bear. Someone who had counted to 47 and couldn't count to 48, someone who is finally ready to admit she needed help. Marina dialed the number. It rang twice before a voice answered. This is Lieutenant Colonel Reeves. I've been expecting your call. How did you know I would call? Because Colonel Castellanos said you would. Eventually. There was warmth in the voice, understanding. And because everyone calls, eventually. The ones who survive, anyway. I don't know what I need, Marina admitted. That's okay. We'll figure it out together. When can you come in for an evaluation? Marina looked around the maintenance facility, at the workbenches and weapons lockers and fluorescent lights that had been her refuge. As soon as possible. Good. There's a transport leaving your base tomorrow at 0600. Be on it. After hanging up, Marina sat in the growing darkness, feeling something unfamiliar stirring inside her. Not peace. Exactly. But perhaps the beginning of it. The rifle was locked away. The number had been called. The decision was made. 47 would always be part of her story. But it didn't have to be the end of it as she walked back to her quarters that night. Marina noticed things she had stopped seeing months ago. The stars overhead, bright and infinite. The sound of laughter from the recreation tent. The simple fact of being alive in a moment not defined by scopes and targets and calculations. Tomorrow would bring uncertainty. Questions about her future, her purpose. Her identity beyond the function she had performed. But tonight, for the first time in 14 months, Marina Volkov felt like a person instead of a weapon. And that, she realized, was enough to start with. Sometimes the bravest thing a warrior can do isn't pulling the trigger. It's knowing when to put down the rifle and ask for help. Marina had finally found that courage. The number would stop at 47. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly where it was meant to end.